When character data is stored in past versions of SQL Server, you had to choose between storing Unicode text in columns with the nchar or the nvarchar data types, or non-Unicode text using the char and varchar data types. SQL Server 2019 now includes the ability to store Unicode characters in char and varchar data type columns through support of the UTF-8 character encoding. Unicode is a single unified standard for encoding text and characters that aims to support all of the languages in the world, past and present, and all of the symbols that we use to communicate. Currently, Unicode supports around 140,000 characters, covering everything from the capital letter A to the mathematical symbol for less than or approximate to the friendly snowman emoji. SQL Server's previous Unicode-compliant text data types, nchar and nvarchar, both use the UTF-16 encoding to store all of these characters. UTF-16 uses 2 bytes of data to store each character in the complete Unicode set, and this remains unchanged in SQL Server 2019. With a UTF-8 encoding enabled on char and varchar columns, you can now store the complete Unicode character set with these data types as well. UTF-8 uses between 1 and 4 bytes to store Unicode characters, so some characters take less space in UTF-8 over UTF-16, and some characters will take the same or more space to store. This means that depending on the actual text that you're saving in your databases, you might see a decrease in the amount of space used, or you might see a dramatic increase in the space used when choosing char or varchar in UTF-8 over storing the same data as nchar or nvarchar using UTF-16. So if space savings isn't the main reason for including UTF-8 support, then why might you consider it for your databases? The main reason is for compatibility. Most of the modern web uses UTF-8 encodings. It's the default encoding for most Linux and Unix systems, and it's backwards compatible with basic ASCII text. So in importing or exporting data to other systems, XML files, or scraping the internet, no conversion will need to be undertaken by the database engine to store it in a SQL Server database. UTF-8 support is added to an entire database or to individual table columns through the correlation property. New correlations like this one have been added that use the _UTF-8 suffix to denote compatibility with the new Unicode encoding support for char and varchar data types. You can see all of the updated correlations in Management Studio when you create a new database. I'm going to right-click on the Databases folder here in Object Explorer and say New Database, and then switch over here to the Options page. In the Correlation drop-down menu, you're going to see a number of new correlations that all end in the _UTF-8 notation. Simply choose one of these when you create a new database to enable Unicode support in your char and varchar data types. Let's also take a look at applying UTF-8 encodings to specific columns in a table, even when the database itself doesn't have a supported correlation. I'm going to create a new database called Correlation Test. Then we can verify the database's correlation by selecting the name and correlation name columns out of sys.databases. In the results, we can see that this database currently does not support UTF-8 encodings, and we can see that based off the fact that it doesn't have _UTF-8 in the correlation name. However, we can create a new table within this database that does support UTF-8. I'm going to create a table called character data, and it'll include 4 columns. The first 2 will be char and varchar data types. Both of these will not support Unicode text. The next one will support Unicode, and it'll use the standard nchar data type. And then finally we have another char column. This one will support Unicode text because I'm specifying a different correlation here that includes UTF-8. Let's highlight all of these lines and execute it to create that table. Then, just to be sure, we can verify which correlation each of these columns is using by selecting name and correlation name from sys.columns. No surprise here, the first 3 are all using the database's default correlation, and the last one is using our custom correlation. Now let's insert some Unicode text into each of these columns. I'm going to insert 3 different records. The first record is just going to contain the capital letter A all the way across. The next record will include the less than or approximate equal to mathematical symbol all the way across. And the last record will include snowman all the way across. I'll highlight these lines to insert these 3 records into the table, and then we can select everything back out of the character data table. In the results, we'll see that the 2 non-Unicode columns, these first 2 here, didn't store the characters properly, but the nchar column and the UTF-8 enabled char column did. Now there are some quirks with SQL Server 2019's UTF-8 support. and you'll need to do some experimentation with your data before seeing if adopting it is the right approach for you. There are some differences when using UTF-8 instead of UTF-16. For instance, if I scroll down on my script a little bit, we're going to see a second select statement here. This one is going to use the length function to calculate the length of each of these columns. This will tell me how many characters are in each string. In fact, I'm actually going to run this select statement with the select star from character data as well, so we can see all of the data at once. The snowman character stored in the nchar column comes back with a length of 2, while the same character in a UTF-8 enabled char column says 1. That's because this particular snowman is actually made up of 2 distinct Unicode characters, one for the snowman itself and a different character for the falling snowflakes. This is called a pre-composed Unicode character. The UTF-16 data type is counting both characters, and the UTF-8 snowman is only counting it as a single character. This is just a simple demonstration that illustrates one of the quirks that you'll need to be aware of when working with SQL Server 2019's Unicode support. So play around with the new UTF-8 Unicode support with a development copy of your data to see if there's any problems that show up, and to determine if there's any performance or storage gains to be had by storing Unicode data in char and varchar typed columns.